Hi, I'm Antha Williams, Head of Global Climate and Environment Programs at Bloomberg Philanthropies. We're delighted to sponsor this year's 10th Sustainable Congress. The private sector has a crucial role to play in combating climate change in Brazil and around the world, and the leadership of businesses in Brazil has been crucial to both combating climate change and advancing the economy. With CEBDS, Bloomberg Philanthropies is working to help businesses set science-based targets to reduce emissions and also to report their climate risk using the framework provided by the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, or TCFD. TCFD and initiatives like Visão Brazil 2050 are powerful tools that benefit the business agenda and the environment. This year's summit will bring together leaders from across businesses and the private sector and civil society to build a cleaner and more resilient and sustainable society. We hope you'll join us.
Olá, damos início agora ao quarto.
We are getting started with the fourth panel here, 2021. We will now begin with Task Force recommendation for financial disclosures related to climate risk. We will join this panel Denise Pavarina, Associate Consultant, Grego Consultants, and Vice Chair of TCFD, Cesar Sanchez, Superintendent of Sustainability at B3, Malu de Oliveira Pinto e Paiva, Executive Vice President of Sustainability for Vale. To moderate, I pass the floor now to Carol Begelli, Executive Manager, Banco do Brasil. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank you all for being here in this fourth panel, the second day of the Sustainable Congress 2021. In the next few minutes, we'll talk about all the recommendations for the task force for the financial disclosures. This task force was created by the Financial Establishment Board in November 2015, with all the participants from the public and private sector. When we propose to establish a set of recommendations to help all the participants, stakeholders of the market in terms of the climate change. So diverse stakeholders can fully identify and understand the financial risks according to climate risks. The task force aimed to meet the demands of the market with useful information, being consistent, contextualized, and allowing the benchmark of the institutions so that they can better identify the opportunities and the changes in the climate risks in the mid and long term. As for these demands in terms of transparency, this EDF has brought us recommendations in 4 areas: governance, climate metrics, and risk management. In the perspective of the financial sector, the way corporations incorporate climate risks in their decisions, impact in terms of where, when, and how to invest. According to the final report for the recommendation of TCFD, one of the most meaningful and better points to understand is climate risks. The associated risks involve the change in the regulamentations, the dynamics of the market in terms of several factors. Somehow, some moment, they will become financial resources. So thus, it's important to identify the impacts of the climate and to understand the specific risks that each sector is exposed and what's the cost associated. To start this discussion in this panel, I offer the first question to our speaker, Denise Pavarina. She participated in the creation of the task force. Denise, good afternoon.
Abordar com você.
I'd like to talk with you about the status of the latest report back in 2020. In that report, you could observe that there's some space for a better participation of all the points here in terms of the companies and the recommendations. What can you say about that? Well, I believe that's a process, an ongoing process. When we released the first report back in 2017, we were aware that it was a process of evolution because it was a new topic, and it still is for most companies. And then if you keep thinking about this universe of companies, I'd like to offer some information. We have 2,502 companies that support TCFD, and therefore they compromise to offer the recommendations to release them. And these companies, they are the recurring in terms of emission, but they are bigger than the recurring emission companies in the world. It's a process. Thinking about the challenges and hurdles we have in terms of recurring events, and you talked about the 2020 report, and then we'll have the 2021 report that you have worked on it, and then we have just signed it off. It went to the Financial Stability Board to be approved. But the challenges are we still have a lack of information that is systemic, because it's not only the information from the company to report it. It also needs the information in a systematic way from all the stakeholders that are interacting. And then the other point is the pattern, the standard of the pattern of the report is not defined yet. If you see the IFRS last year, we got together with so many other organizations and with TSDF as well, that is also supporting this work. And we start creating a pattern of reports so that all companies might divulge all these risks in matrix of risk inside this integrated report, but not only on a separated basis. So these difficulties with metrics, the difficulties with the data collection to offer estimates, to offer internal measures, and this process has advanced a lot when we think about the beginning, and then it requires a board decision and inside the company to have this effort, to make this effort. It's the important decision. Back in 2015 or 16, I spoke about that because it was about São Paulo. Now it's not only São Paulo, it's Brazil as a whole, so it's easier for people to understand. We have this water risk. Companies do not need water. Some companies really need, and some other companies need water even more. These sectors must be ready for a radical and chronic change. It's a chronic risk. There are the severe risks, acute risks, and they must be ready because it's a strategic plan, so that it must be somehow reflected in the discussion and projections of this company in terms of investments. So we are talking about very concrete discussions. They are not theoretical discussions. And then I believe that the easiest part is to talk about risks. Everyone is used to talking about risks. The highest difficulties are the targets, the metrics, and in terms of this literacy and learning. Thank you, Denise. I share these thoughts with you. Banco do Brasil has just joined TCDF, and I'm proud to be one of the people who have helped in this decision-making process, and we have seen these topics you have brought us. And talking about one of the points you showed us in terms of the information, we want transparency because it's fundamental to help in the understanding of the risk and decisions. And my next question will be addressed to Cesar. Cesar, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Carol. So let's get to it. According to the reference decision that is in public consultation, we can see a closer proximity to the capital market, but there's a long road for us in terms of the recommendations. So Cesar, in your perspective, what are the ways for us to offer a better approach in the capital market? Thank you for this wonderful question. It's a pleasure to be here, and I believe so. I believe that in this review of this reference, we have a trend to join this part, and I believe in terms of regulation, we have the phase 3 to 7 in terms of the central bank. In the same area, we have other points being conducted and some other efforts in terms of the legislation going towards this direction. But Denise, she could speak so well about that because we need to advance much further in terms of data collection. So they should be better mapped in terms of 1, 2, or 3. And like you said, Carol, congratulations on your outstanding work you have delivered in terms of strategy, governance, risk assessment. Inside this scope and this framework, I can see risks as an important point in terms of risks of transition and also in terms of business model, economic scenario, market, and they are associated with in terms of the preparation. I believe that to map out these risks and to be fully able to understand how you can integrate these risks inside your strategy is fundamental. And inside of this scenario, we can see more and more investors seeking strategies of investment. And once again, we have data, access to information, and reliable information that must be qualified with some patterns that can be compared. At B3, in the companies have several levels of supply chain and compare one model to the other in terms of this clarity and transparency of information. This is very important. And then in a general sense, investors, we have had a fundamental role, not only in terms of the legal aspect, but also for the values and objectives inside these organizations. It helps us so much in promoting this agenda. That's right, Cesar. Thank you so much. You touched a very interesting topic in terms of the central bank regulation for the financial institutions. And we joined all the documentation creation for the public actions and of these regulations in the economic sector, so that you have the central bank rules. And in terms of the CDF, that have all these rules that will help us, guide us in terms of a big contribution we are offering. In this strategy of reduction of gas reductions and greenhouse effect in terms of low carbon, we know that affects many parts of the economic sectors and industries. And taking this into account, my next question is, I'd like to invite Maria Luisa, to join us. Good afternoon, Maria Luisa. Your microphone is muted. Okay. Oh, you can call me Malu, Carol, right? Nicknames are nice here. So right now, the strategy of business is not impacted by the strategy of climate changes because it's already inserted in the strategy of business. It is already recognized as a factor of value generation for the company or value protection. So they are all integrated. When I see here at Vale, we look back in 2018, the company has made a big exercise of self-assessment with using all the sustainable frameworks, and it could identify several gaps, and one of them was according to climate change. The company has already invested in this part. We started joining this CTDF back in 2017, several initiatives, but we did not have a robust strategy that could be concise, clear, with consistent KPIs for this moment. So right now we must define a governance. At Vale, we have a forum called Low Carbon Forum, which is led directly by CEO. All the executive committees present, and all of us have the technical departments involved. This committee defines the strategy and follows up every 2 months all the results of the investments we have been making in terms of climate changes. And there is another forum that it is much more regularly meeting. That's the technical forum, where we can invite specialists together with our own specialists. We define governance and targets that the company will seek in terms of this topic. Besides, before talking about this big targets, part of my climate change team has shared targets with the strategic department. So to show you that it's very much inside, it's not parallel, it's all integrated. So Vale has defined, when it decided to take on this robust strategy in terms of climate change, we have the commitment to reduce by 33% in terms of emissions for the scope 1 and 2, and we will have the commitment to be net zero by 2050 in terms of scopes 1 and 2. Then later I will talk about scope 3. Right now we are offering 2 axes of work. There's a front of innovation that we have talked publicly before, that we will be investing from $4 to $6 billion in terms of by 2030 for IT innovation. So all the changes will come with IT innovation. There's another example for a program called Power Shift, where we are seeking alternatives to have zero emissions of fossil fuels. Right now, we have some electric trains, electric cars being used in underground mines in other countries. And we also have an agreement together with other mining companies, with Rio Tinto and BHP, offering a challenge that is open to seek innovation and electrification of all big trucks inside the mines. So there are many fronts in terms of reduction. in terms of the scope 1 and 2 for 2050 in order to be net zero, not only the reduction, but to also have a front for removal and compensation based on solutions with nature. As for scope 3, we define the target for scope 3. We want to reduce by 15% of our carbon emissions up to 2035, and then we allow to and we want to have this transition in terms of forests and other natural solutions. This scope is more complex because it depends on the chain, just like Denise was saying, that the chain as a whole, and we have a big commitment to keep improving more and more the quality of our product, the mixed details of our product, and then so we will not have very high temperatures offered to our collaborators. So for 20 years, we have been developing this, the green lubricant, that this product will no longer need high temperatures, some of manipulation of mineral ores. So we also have partnerships with the collaborators to test these products and others. Inside scope 3, we have a navigation front as well. And this year, we have 2 new items inside our navigation front. When you have rotational sails, so since they use the wind, they reduce the consumption of fuel. And then we have installed compressors in the hull of our vessel so that it can float. It does not, you don't have the same old system that contributes to a bigger pollution, and then it will contribute to emissions reductions. It's important in this process. I would like to go back to the point of governance, not only establishing targets, but to have a constant management with a follow-up of all the projects, reporting to this forum of low carbon that will report the sustainability. It must report sometimes a year to the administration council. That's it, Carol. I don't know if I have answered what you asked, but that's it. Sure, Malu. Thank you so much. And I would like to highlight some points you have said in terms of this strategy delivered by Vale in terms of reduction fronts. That's explanation for the new opportunities, new tools, new process, new suppliers, and then you have an array of market. So that's why I always say that you generate and offer value protection at the same time. Sustainable items work like this. So I didn't say about scope 2 that we have a target inside our electricity to come from renewable sources. Today in Brazil, 90% comes, and then 2025 will be totally renewable, and in the world 2025. Not only this perspective, but all of this. All risks bring opportunities as well. So as managers, we must understand and make use of these opportunities. So you have illustrated very clearly, Malu. Now breakout protocol, because it was part of the sustainable committee from Vale. I'm very proud of listening to you. You know that to have drinkable water reduction targets as well. It's a very important moment to see you share with you. So Denise, you planted good seeds in that, right? You sowed very nice seeds, and then we have the commitment. We're not talking about sustainability. We're talking about the highest governance forums inside the company so that we can invest. And as for governance, That's what will offer us the culture and spread all the items inside the organization. It's very good for us in terms of this strategy. Another important point I'd like to address now that's a hurdle for us, we have said this before, Denise has already shared with us in the first question, what is the biggest difficulty in terms of metrics? Recently, we had a consultation from TCDF that went deeper in this fourth topic, probably because this topic demands a little bit more of data, a little bit more of information, and then in this second round, I'd like to have the opportunity with you today with the 3 questions. 2 questions in one. As for TCDF to offer the same 3 topics, do you believe they are integrated? And what are the plans for TCDF for the next years? And if we have some sort of proposal from TCDF in terms of task force for releasing information in terms of nature, TNDF. So I'll seize the moment to have 3 questions.
Okay, actually, there are 3 aspects that are going to be, disseminated right now. One is about the metrics, the targets and metrics that we have spoken about. One that we worked on it for a year, that is going to talk about this transition planning. How can you build up a transition plan? We talked about transition before, but we didn't dive into that yet, and how we can build that, It was a very interesting work. These papers are very, very profound. The work task has an objective of not determining to the market what to do, but we want to offer possibilities, concepts, so the market finds its path. And then, of course, we offer the best practices. We try to understand what is happening. So these 3 papers are going to be, disseminated, promoted in the next 3 months. The plan for the future is to keep on supporting these thematic discussions, monitoring the implementation or promoting it. In this very moment, we have some support from the IRFS. I wouldn't call it a standardization, but I would say a guidance, so company can promote or disclose their information or financial information, and how we can keep on doing this kind of work of support, so companies don't give up what we call knowledge hub. One of the other things that we are going to do in the future is more practical. There are many papers from all over the place, but we are going to talk about practical cases to be discussed. It's still a project, but it's ongoing. There is a relation to the TNFD. It's fantastic as well. It was launched very recently. I attended a lecture of a person that is doing that to see how it's been designed. Initially, we don't have the intention to work with them, but without a doubt, they are one part of the nature that is affected. All the resources will be affected, and they must be considered. After these pillars, the TCFD is bringing into the market is going to be much simpler to understand this concept. They are welcome, they are complementary, and they are fundamental. They are fundamental because they are fundamental. So the development of things, I don't think there is any plan that we work together because everybody is working very hard, right? So it's important to concentrate, and it makes a difference, and focusing on one thing at a time makes the difference, right? As you said before, they complement each other. These subjects, they find common ground. I myself, I'm very anxious for the next aspects, next future events about that to help the process of the industry as a whole. Explanations, cases, I'm sure it helps a lot. My next question is for Cesar. You have talked about investors. They are looking for investment strategies. In your experience, Cesar, working with the B3, have you noticed that demand of investors on new information, disclosing of information about this climate change, has it increased in the last years? Are there national investors, are they aware about these themes, or does this information come from international investors? Oh, excellent question. I'm gonna give you some figures in some context, background about that. So let's start with the Industrial Revolution. From that time up to now, we have 2.3 trillion of CO2 yearly, 40 billion of tons of CO2 as well. We emit. This curve is not lower. We have lots of work to carry out. As Malu said, excellent work, beautiful work. I can talk about the risks, the opportunities, but let's focus a little bit on investment. Well, having this background and about the investment that we have, these ESG funds and other funds, green funds, the allocation of capitals was roughly $100 billion. Today, allocation is roughly $250 billion. Debts on ESG is roughly $2.3 trillion allocated. Expectations is that this market might increase to $11 trillion in the few years to come. So ESG, it's very important. So all this area of green stocks and so forth. Investors, they are looking more and more opportunities to invest, and they're taking into consideration their strategy on ESG. You do have the best asset managers already having that in their strategy. They're looking for these opportunities, and there is an increase. Well, normally, the E, that is the environmental part of this acronym, has progressed a lot. We still have to work very hard on that, but there is a great evolution. The social from this acronym, ESG, sorry, he's frozen, can't hear him. It has evolved as well, very strongly as well. And then the demand for data and information is huge. If you want to allocate the capital, if you think about asset management, there is a pension fund that is that focus on governance or environmental, social. So to understand the strategies, more and more, there is a demand for data and for this kind of information. But surely ESG has grown a lot. And to wrap it up, allocation of capitals on ESG in the world is roughly $35 trillion, corresponding to 36% of the total capital to be invested, and it's growing. So, I work with sustainability, of course. You have a biased opinion. I mean, I think that's one of the greatest opportunities for the next decade, in my opinion. I thoroughly agree with you, Cesar. I think it's a very important opportunity. You talked about the trillions. It showcases what we are talking about in this panel, right? Malu has brought her experience about Vale. This, how you are enhancing, promoting this company. How can we support companies to overcome their challenges and the difficulties that they face to work and to face these 4 fronts? According to your experience, how can we help the companies to overcome these difficulties?
Malu, acho que está no mute.
Please open your mic. Well, I think the manner that you can help us is like you're doing here today, is sharing all these different experiences. We have different level of maturity. One has more maturity in one side or the other, having these discussion forums, offering some technical guidance. If everybody's lost in the same thing, somebody should turn on the light. Sharing, learning together, it's important. And it does generate lots of opportunities. Our vision, according to some working groups, they're very quick because sometimes you have difficulties. Sometimes you don't know how to deal with things, promoting discussions. It's important because one of the biggest difficulties that we have now, Denise talked about the targets and Cesar also about how to collect data and also standardization of information is one side, but I'm going to talk about the dimension of the data because if you are in the sustainability chain, talking about the responsibility to all the time to request more information, how to define the target when I talked about the 33%. It's not easy to define a target. When you overcome the difficulty to understand the data, look outside your box and understand how to work with research and development, how to design a target that is not created by few people, how to understand the operation that is involved with this target, R&D as well, how to build the target, sustainability as well. So doing something that is challenging, of course, we are afraid if we commit ourselves publicly. I'm not clear about what to do, but I want to get there. So I always say that I feel kind of comfortable. I don't know if some companies know about the path. Everybody is well defined. No, I think we are working on a vision. There will be mistakes along the way. But if there is a challenging but believable target, it's important to have that because the target is by Vale. That are the heads of those who are responsible, but I normally like to say that we are biodegradable. It's going to come the day that in addition to social and environmental, it's going to be part of the company from one end to the other, political relationships, going to be part of everything. So we don't have to exist. Our team won't need to exist because it's going to be embodied by the company. So it's important that everybody is engaged, understand that is related to this target. It's not an environmental something founded, but it's part of the business, and also with the innovation and R&D department working together. Just to let you know about the difficulties that we face, I'd like to add a remark about that. I agree with you, Malu. The difficulty is establishing a target, but we do have some references. We signed the Paris Agreement. If we, as a country, I mean, whether you like or not, if we signed that document, we've got to understand and showcase this reference in the company, either because of love or pain. We have to sit on the chair of the CEO. Always people want to know about the bottom line, and there is a guy from the XYZ department. I myself was an executive, and this person tells him, I have to do this or that. I have to have a forecast, maybe a reduction. So it comes from outside to inside. First of all, we have this agreement, and then we have the investors. Then we have 100 shareholders, and they've made up their mind. They're going to find that in their portfolio. If they want to have net zero in their portfolio, we will have to adjust. In addition to the cases that I have told about the water situation, not only because we have shortage of water, sometimes we have lots of rain that stops the traffic or trains or cars. Not only the shortage, it's coming from outside, inside the companies, I mean, consumers, investors, they are all asking, that's the right moment. It wasn't before when I started this task force. You started before because I was not working with sustainability, but the momentum is right now. We have to take advantage and do something. I've been in the sustainability for 20 years. I started in 2002. I think this astral thing is taking place right now. The investors' position was very important in the last 3-4 years because they've asked us, and because of that, this process is speeding up. All the targets are aligned to the Paris Agreement, undoubtedly. But when I talk about difficulty, because it has to be part of the culture of the company, I've got to engage people. They've got to understand the meaning about that. You know, my 15-year-old son, he talks about that. He's gonna fly only if there is a renewable fuel, otherwise he won't travel. So we've got to be able that this new generation, I use plane, I have no problem about that. And I tell my son, you've got to be ready to make sure that we can have this shift in our heads, change the mindset, change the life. I have the same sensation. It's the momentum. We've got to discuss and plan. I mean, and then put that into practice. We don't have to add. It's now, it's natural, it's part of our lives. We know that sustainability, it has to do with solvency, survival. There are many attitudes that we've got to take them now and not after. And then we can do that in the future. Well, what Malu has said about these working groups, I know that Febraban has formed a group, a working group, trying to follow up and what we feel. I'm going to talk to you guys from Febraban because there is a pilot in Japan. It's been implemented in Brazil to add companies. I know CBDS, yachts. I would like to thank you very much for inviting me and thanking you for your work, because this working group, they are very important to gather together knowledge, information, and spread it out. That's the secret. That's the secret. I do believe in that. Well, I'd like to open now so you can leave a message for the next minutes, but I'd like each one of you to offer a message for our participants about this theme. So Denise, you would like to start? Well,
it's a big pleasure to be here, and it's very important for the companies and investors to be able to include in their decisions of investments and the usage of capital in terms of risk and opportunity for the climate areas. So it's the very moment we should not miss this train, should not miss the opportunity. So because this is the very moment to implement this governance. Thank you so much. Thank you, Denise. Malu. Oh, it's very hard, but this event is for companies, is made for companies. But what I have understood now, that I have the privilege somehow to learn how to do it inside the companies, I believe we have the responsibility to take it into the common consumers, because companies have a very big role in that, but we need the citizens to be fully aware, to fully understand and translate this into practical actions and help people make good decisions in their routine, in their everyday life in terms of consumption, behavior, product, and how these products and daily decisions are interconnected with the climate issues and general issues in terms of sustainability. That's the point. We are the corporate world, but we also have this important role for the civil society. Thank you, Malu. Cesar? I really like it that when Denise said you should not miss this train, should not miss this opportunity, because she talked about this moment of this confluency of data. And I believe it's important what she said in terms of her remarks. And we have passed by this moment, not only for the activists, the diverse organizations, groups inside these organizations in different areas, levels, and hierarchy, so that we have a number of people, growing number, that sustainability is not for business to business. We must have this material. It's important. We must reach this area, and I have a very optimistic vision that we will keep doing that. We will not miss this opportunity, and whatever I can do to that, you can count on me. You can count with our company as a hub of information, as a partnership for engagement, also for information and assistance to investors. And that's my final message, my final remark. It's an excellent panel, and congratulations. Well, folks, to conclude this panel, I'd like to thank you all for your participation, Denise, Malu, Cesar, and it has been a big pleasure for me to talk to you about this topic. Thank you for sharing your experience, your thoughts, your knowledge with this rich debate, full of content. And for sure, it will help us, with no doubt, to connect with these new challenges. To conclude here, in a nutshell, I'd like to thank CBDS for the possibility of being the moderator of this panel. I'd like to wish you all a great afternoon and invite you all to keep following all the panels in the second day. Thank you all. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Carol. I'd like to thank Carol and Denise, Malu, and Cesar for sharing with us their thoughts about this panel. It was so rich, and the comments in our panel here, it's very full of excitement, congratulating everyone. And for you who are watching us, we have a small pause and we have a panel of call to action. To produce and preserve is possible. See you there.